Welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to dive into a threat that's literally all around us, but one that most of us have gotten really good at ignoring. I'm talking about the constant hum of traffic, the rumble of construction, the whine of a plane overhead. We've basically trained ourselves to tune it all out just to get through the day. But here's the thing. While our brains might be hitting the mute button, our bodies are still listening. And they're paying a price we're only just starting to fully understand.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll talk about the sounds we've all learned to just forget about. Then we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible health threat they pose and get into the nitty-gritty of how noise literally rewires our biology. From there, we'll look at the huge impact this has on kids, dig into the frustrating policy failures that let this problem get so bad, and then, and this is the important part, we'll explore how we can start to reclaim our quiet.
So, let's kick things off with a question that really gets to the heart of what it's like to live in the modern world.
I mean, really think about that for a second. We all do it, right? We have to. We filter out that constant city soundtrack just to stay sane. You could call it a survival skill. But here's the really wild part. While your conscious mind is busy ignoring all that racket, your body is still on high alert. Every single sound, especially when you're trying to sleep, is being processed, and that physical reaction is anything but harmless.
Okay, so if our bodies are constantly reacting, what's the big deal? What does that actually add up to? Well, we're not talking about a minor annoyance here. This is a major public health issue that scientists have been sounding the alarm on for decades.
And you know, it's really important we're all on the same page about what noise pollution even is. The two most important words there are unwanted and harmful. This isn't the music you choose to blast in your headphones or a conversation you're having with a friend. No, this is the sound of the modern world being forced on us. It's a soundtrack we can't just turn off.
Let that sink in for a minute. In the European Union, the noise from our cars, our trains, and our planes is considered the second biggest environmental threat to our health. The only thing worse is air pollution. Now, you can often see and smell polluted air, but noise, it's invisible, and in a lot of ways, that's what makes it even more insidious.
So how loud is too loud? Well, the World Health Organization actually has a number for us, 55 decibels. They say if your average daily exposure is higher than that, you are at risk for some pretty serious health problems. And to give you some context, 55 decibels is about the sound of a normal conversation or a humming refrigerator. For millions and millions of us living in cities, that's the baseline background noise we live with 24/7.
And the consequences of being exposed to that all the time are they're staggering. In Europe alone, it's estimated that chronic noise contributes to 12,000 premature deaths every single year. These aren't just statistics, right? These are lives cut short by an environmental problem that we actually have the power to fix.
And the damage doesn't stop there, not by a long shot. That same noise is also linked to 48,000 new cases of ischemic heart disease every year. This relentless, unwanted sound is putting a direct, measurable, and really dangerous strain on all of our cardiovascular systems.
This noise map of a German city? Wow, it makes that invisible threat suddenly very visible. See those dark lines? Those are basically sound highways, showing where traffic noise is dangerously high even at night. And notice how they slice right through the places where people are trying to live and sleep? This is all happening when our bodies are supposed to be resting and recharging, but instead they're just getting bombarded.
But how? I mean, how can something you just hear cause that kind of direct physical harm? This goes way beyond just hearing loss. It's about a deep, ancient biological reaction. So let's get into the science of it. Okay, picture this. You're fast asleep. You are completely unconscious of the traffic rumbling outside your window. But your brain isn't. Your brain hears that sound, perceives it as a potential threat, and it reacts exactly as if you're in danger. It fires up this primitive survival system that was designed to save you from, a saber-toothed tiger, not to deal with the garbage truck that comes every night. This whole reaction is run by something called the HPA axis. Now, that sounds complicated, but you can just think of it as your body's stress HQ. It's the central command for your stress response. When noise triggers it, a whole cascade of changes kicks off in your body. And look, in short bursts, that system keeps you alive. But when it's being switched on all the time by low-level noise, day and night, it just floods your body with stress hormones when you should be at rest. So this chain reaction is really the key to the whole problem. A passing train might not wake you up consciously, but your HPA axis hears it. And boom, it signals the release of adrenaline and cortisol.
Your heart starts beating faster, your blood pressure spikes, and your body enters a state of inflammation. Now just imagine that happening over and over and over again, night after night, for years. That is exactly how noise leads directly to chronic diseases like high blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes, and even type 2 diabetes.
So if that's what noise is doing to a fully grown adult, you have to ask, what on earth is it doing to the most vulnerable people in our society? A child's developing body and mind are uniquely susceptible to this kind of constant environmental stress. This warning from researchers it's pretty chilling, honestly. The damage that noise pollution does in childhood doesn't just go away. It can actually set a kid on a totally different path for their entire life, affecting everything from how well they can learn in school to their physical health decades down the road. A German study of preschoolers put this developmental cost into terms that are just impossible to ignore. This finding is stunning. For every 10 decibel increase in chronic traffic noise they were exposed to, the kids showed a developmental delay that was equivalent to having missed 3 full months of kindergarten. That is a massive learning gap before they've even set foot in first grade.
And you see, it's not just one thing. The impact is a whole cascade of problems. This constant noise raises kids' stress hormones and their blood pressure, just like in adults. But it also directly hurts their ability to focus, which can lead to hyperactivity and inattention. And maybe most critically, it gets in the way of fundamental skills. The sound of traffic literally makes it harder for a child to learn how to read.
Okay, so if the science is this crystal clear, and it has been for decades, it really begs the question, why isn't more being done about this? I mean, we regulate the chemicals in our water, so why don't we regulate the harmful sound in our air? Well, that brings us to the complicated and frankly pretty frustrating story of noise policy.
This timeline tells a story of incredible progress, followed by a complete reversal. Back in the 70s, the US was actually a world leader on this. They created a federal office to tackle the problem head-on, setting standards and making real change. And then, in 1982, the funding was completely cut. The office was shut down. All that responsibility was just kicked down to state and local governments, which created this confusing patchwork of rules that hardly ever get enforced. For over 40 years now, the United States has had no coordinated national strategy for this growing public health crisis.
And that policy vacuum hasn't affected everyone equally. This is where a health issue becomes an environmental justice issue. Because of decades of decisions about housing and highways, it's overwhelmingly lower-income communities and communities of color that end up living right next to the freeways, the airports, and the industrial zones. The burden of noise is not shared equally. Not at all.
But look, this story doesn't have to end in failure. It's not all doom and gloom. Just acknowledging the problem is a huge first step. So what's the path forward? Let's talk about the real, tangible solutions that are already within our grasp.
And the really good news is, we actually know how to fix this. It's not some unsolvable mystery. It just takes a real commitment to tackling it from all sides. We can use smart urban planning to literally design quietness into our cities. We've got tech like quieter electric vehicles and special sound-absorbing pavement. We can use nature. Trees and green spaces are amazing natural sound barriers. And of course, we need strong policies to create and enforce quiet zones. And you know, even our own individual choices, like choosing to walk or bike, can collectively help turn down the volume on our entire world. And that leaves us with one final, really powerful thought to chew on. For way too long, we've just accepted noise as the price of progress, and we've thought of quiet as some kind of rare luxury for the rich. But what if we just flip that script entirely? What if we stopped thinking of quiet as just the absence of sound and started treating it as a vital, shared, public resource, something as essential to our collective health as clean air and clean water?